After years of working together in a digital space, members of Moneyless Society finally got to meet in person for the first time at a beautiful gathering in the Kentucky Hills.
We spent 4 days hanging around Otherworld Co-op, feasting on vegetables grown on site, sourdough breads gifted by a local baker, and eggs from the chickens next door.
The first ever Moneyless Society retreat allowed us to put our values of mutual aid into direct action in the purest form.
And reminded us all that while the old world is ending, we have the opportunity to rethink everything.
Meeting moneyless thinkers in person was such a wonderful experience.
An invaluable respite from the horrors of modern-day capitalism.
Please rejoice with us as you witness just one of the breathtaking, soul-shaking conversations held over those 4 days.
When people who value connection over currency had a chance to get together.
The old world is ending.
And we have the opportunity to rethink everything.
This is a show about the systemic problems in our world.
And the real solutions we have today.
To transition from an apocalyptic storm of war, scarcity, and ecological collapse.
To create an abundantly advanced, collaborative society.
That sustains all life.
You may think it's an impossible dream.
But the alternative is an inevitable nightmare.
We're your hosts, Matt Holton,
Amanda Smith,
and Zachary Marlowe.
And together,
we can move past this economic absurdity
and come together to actualize our collective potential.
To create something completely new.
We are
Moneyless Society.
So the big question we want to answer, I think, is what is Moneyless Society? It's the question people ask us, and we want to really basically open the floor to discuss the expansiveness of what this idea, what this movement, organization, meme empire, podcast, that it's more than all these things. It's more than the sum of its parts, that it is a systemic kind of activist ecosystem that is developing into many different facets. So as we see here, there are many people in Moneyless Society, many of them even more behind the scenes and online and just buzzing around the world. But we've come together in our first big assembly from all these people that have been organizing together for like 2 years now. And now we've met each other for the first time, and it doesn't feel like the first time. Mm-hmm. But the big question is, what is Moneyless Society? What is it to you? What is it? Where is it going? What does that mean in practice? What are we doing? Flo.
I'll go first. So I found the Moneyless Society through the meme channel on the Facebook group, and then Marlo had a call. And I was in a part of my life where I was like, you know what? The revolution's been knocking on the back of my brain my whole life. And yes, this sounds like the good people I want to be around. And over the last 2 years, I've understood that this piece of the Moneyless Society is so essential, a piece that I was missing in my own theorizing, in my own activism, in my own research, and all my solutions. I hadn't identified, well, how are we going to eat, though, throughout this systemic change where we're healing our trauma? Where's the food going to come from? And then identifying the systemic barrier that money has put into our consciousness, into our society, where it's basically disrupted every natural connection that we need to fill our needs, to meet our needs. And so what Moneyless Society has become for me, more than just a research bank or an education center or a meeting center, it's the experience of working with a group of people who just want me there, right? That's been the most magical part of living in modern society and having to deal with all these boundaries and expectations of my worth and am I contributing enough, and this standard that I was born with and bred with, that's just not here. Mm-hmm. Where we all understand intuitively that the biggest thing you can contribute to any group is yourself. And your ideas, and how that's met does the healing process and reactivates the natural connection centers that we're born with that were deactivated, very aggressively so. Just being around this community naturally activates those, right? So just spending time in a moneyless conversation, you then leave with that new neurological pattern, new expectation that then disseminates out and produces an endless questioning of what's actually going on here, and identifying that it's not working, But having that knowledge of that the money is the core has allowed me to put it all together in a way that's not intimidating or scary or mysterious. It's actually quite common sense and obvious.
I want to speak to the idea that specifically that money is the core, and I love that it, at least for me, just feels so intuitive and obvious that it's the core, but it's also like a terrifying and far-fetched idea because of how immersed and embedded we are in the monetary structure. And I really love how the book describes the Moneyless Society as the next economic evolution, and how it really feels like we are shedding off something that has been dragging us down for so long, right? So anyone can talk about problems, anyone can see the problems, we're all experiencing them and mired in them, but by seeing that the monetary structure is at least like the core that is holding all of those threads together and what can help us untangle everything has been so helpful. I mean, Marlo, I remember we were talking one time about like, well, how do we like organize, how do we like figure out our priorities, and there's so many people like doing the same thing, so why don't we just let them do the thing? And I remember Marlo being like, well, yeah, people have great ideas, they're practicing all sorts of interesting stuff, but not enough people are actually sitting there saying like, well, money is the problem. This like transaction and the just the drain on the system is the problem. So I think that's been the most important thing to me, is seeing it as a vision that is so clear, but it's all, even though it's so difficult and it's not easy, like we're not gonna be able to say, well, we're getting rid of money tomorrow kind of thing. Like we understand that it's far off, but that vision just feels like the right way to go.
I think one of the things I've seen come up a lot when people, just this retreat that we've been on, like we've been talking about like the possibility of the transition, like the way to get there. And I think that one of the things that clicked for me when I encountered Moneyless Society at first was like that there are other ways to interact with each other. Like we all have things that we create, we all have things that like we do, and we can share those. Like that's, you know, being in this space with you all, like that's been the experience the whole time, you know, as we're just sharing things. There's no question of like, well, I did give you this though, so I'm gonna need something from you, you know, like we know that we're gonna like get each other, you know, and kind of, to me, that's what I see a lot with Moneyless Society, is that idea expanding out. People all experience that, or all of us have experienced that somewhere, with family, with friends, and making that something more like, not formal, but just like universal, you know, with anyone that you trust, and learn to trust more people. That's been like a big part of the vision for me, is like, just share what you have, what you know.
I found Moneyless Society through the Instagram, and I was just so excited to jump in and build change. And through that, I've gotten to a point in the organization where I'm guiding that with other people. We're all flexing these communication muscles to help us better understand each other and what we want to do. And we're envisioning a goal, and we're getting there step by step. So that's what we're doing with circles in the organization. Through the people circle, through the direct action circle, we're all collectively agreeing that we have to do better. And we're doing that with small projects at first, but also better, like I said, just flexing our communication muscles.
Do you want to talk about sociocracy, because you referenced the circle?
For sure. Sociocracy is our organization structure where instead of a top-down, in a normal company, the boss tells you what to do, the manager tells you what to do, it's consent-based. So the people in the circle who are affected by decisions in the circle consent on decisions. And without collective consent, nothing happens. So finding the ideal solution is the prerogative.
It's a very inefficient way to run a cult.
It is.
I do want to introduce Trent here as a special member, because he was one of the people that reached out that really made me realize, like, oh fuck, we're doing something here. You were like, I'm 17 years old, I'm too young to join the revolution, what can I do? And I was like, oh my God, this is the most amazing thing that's ever happened to me.
Right.
That people around the world are hearing the call, they see this vision, they believe, they know it's possible. And they just want to get help. I mean, they want to jump in and be the help. They want to be the change we want to see in the world.
People want to do it.
I was going to say, as you're flexing that communication muscle, it's making it easier for people to understand too. That's been the coolest thing to see is just as we're figuring out better ways to describe this grand, fantastic vision. Once we do describe it, people are like, that actually that sounds intuitive. That sounds beautiful. That sounds gorgeous. And you're right, we're seeing people flock to it from all over the world.
Yeah, that is probably the most gratifying part for me, is being able to make those connections with people from all around the globe. As someone who so rarely gets to travel to that extent, I've always lived vicariously through others. So, and also just felt really sheltered, and not in a privileged way, though I'm there's definitely some privilege folded in there, but in a austeric way where I didn't get to go out and do this and travel there and so on and so forth. So to speak to my experience and the evolution and where we're at right now, coming on board with the original founder, Matt Holton, back in 2020, I was just posting memes on our Facebook and memes on our Instagram and maybe a thing or two on our TikTok. And it never ceases to amaze me when I sit with where we started and where we are now. Like the meme revolution really is a thing to some extent. Our page grew rapidly. It became the most rewarding thing I had done in my adult life. And maybe people would say, well, that's a lame admission to say that posting memes was your most rewarding thing. But when you grow a page from 10,000 to 250,000 in under 2 years, and you have people sending you messages in your inbox saying, you saved my, no savior complex, but you made a difference in my life. You echoed the feeling I've had on a cellular level all my life, and I'd never heard anyone else speak it. And now I feel safe. I feel like I don't live in a world I'm alienated to completely any longer. And so that was the vibe for the longest time and continues to be. And so through those channels of the Instagram and the Facebook, we started to recruit. And some of the faces you see here today are the OG members, and then just the ones that continue to be to gravitate toward us. Like Janique here is newer in contrast to some others, but nonetheless deeply embedded and extremely invaluable. And as you can see, there's a wide range of walks of life here. The diversity and the sheer richness of who comes into this space is never lacking. And so that has been the most gratifying part for sure. Not just growing social medias, but just knowing that you did make a difference in 1 or 1 million lives to any extent. And so what we have here now, having started from sharing memes, is of course a wonderful podcast from our creative genius, Marlo. And then on the background, as he touched on earlier, there's so much buzzing going on. There's so much work happening. And it's time that the world see what's been going on in the background, behind the memes, behind the podcast. We have people who have brought the work of their life to our table, and people who have brought ideas, concepts, and everything in between, like Nate with the Kindness Rebellion. Myself, as of recent, with Appalachian Community Mill and Mutual Aid Project, Moneyless Society's first on-the-ground direct action project. Magnova here from Lavra, and then just a host of skills and passion from each and every person at the table. And it's important to note at that point also, it's not that everyone in Moneyless Society brought something like an authority, like an authority in a subject or authority in a skill set. It's just that they chose to show up as who they are with their interest and their heart and contributed it, as Ev was touching on. The real power here is that everyone recognizes they have something to give, and they come to the table with it and just give as they can. And it all gets integrated and creates the abundance and the momentum that is propelling Moneyless Society forward into an ever more tangible and impactful project.
I just want to riff on what you said about the grandiose dream, this crazy thing. And just a reminder, like, it feels grandiose and crazy because of our programming, right? A lot of what we've been talking about at this retreat, realizing, being at Kay's incredible self-sustaining land, is that what we're about is really a returning to the natural, functional way of living, and understanding that money is an alien concept that has been inserted into our connection process, and realizing that connection is the currency. Connection is the currency, right? It's coming here and finding out that I have something to give because I also need to eat, and I have a body, right? And I know people, and that's all it is. And I'm willing to go through that process of self-analysis and re-identifying, is this working for me or not? Where did this belief come from? It's all within community, right? And just the meeting place, which what Moneyless is so cool at doing. With their systemic support group, which Janique, if you want to talk about that, someone else should.
Yeah, there's so many things to bring up.
There's so many things to talk about.
Yeah.
So yeah, healing is a very important part of this process, because healing our belief systems and healing the trauma that has sat in our body through not having access to our own actualization as people, and our own inner healing is a right that we have, and anything that stands between that is a barrier. So when we think about the values of life, the values, like when we say to people, like, what are your values?
Yeah.
The values are never money. That's not right? But when we insert money, it has become the value.
Yeah.
And it's not a value, it's only a flow, a current to the value that we want. And it has distorted the flow, actually, to the nourishment that is the value, right? The food and the children and the planet, the environment, people, all of our relationships with each other, the things that we build, the creative impulse that comes out of us expressing and actualizing as we came into the world, like, that's the gift, that's the value, and the quality of life that we create together for ourselves and for each other in community, that is a value. And we're just saying, let's remove anything that obstructs our ability to access the values of life. And offering psychological support to each other, with our belief systems and the ways that these systemic traumas have percolated through the family systems and the work systems and the access systems. We're helping cleanse ourselves of all of that, so that we're removing our inner obstacles to our values that we want to access. And the people in here are so clear on that, like so clear that we can make exponential progress together. And we all can make that exponential progress together whenever somebody plugs in to this kind of clearing channel. So there's a lot of nourishment that we can gain in so many ways through our nourishing conversations and our peer-to-peer support and our peer-to-peer education. We're learning and teaching and sharing and communicating all the time in a direct flow. And it's efficient, and it's powerful, and it's beautiful.
I kind of want to tap Lavra in, as you've been a little quiet, on that subject of peer-to-peer networks and the networking aspect of it, the web that we're building, this shimmering thing to catch.
Yeah, that is definitely where my brain likes to go. I'm always thinking about structure. For me, Moneyless Society is somewhat of a superstructure that is tapping into different networks that already exist. I mean, as we've been here, we have discovered a whole host of just alignments with the things that we're already doing. Well, someone's doing it, and they want to give it away. Like, that happens so much. And for most of the time that I've been developing Magnova, and trying to explain it to people, it's really hard to kind of communicate what it does and what its purpose and how you use it. But all of the things that it's trying to do are just really help people organize those gifts that they're willing to give, because if we could do that as a group, through like social connections and then templating to scale and helping people access that, with no barriers. I mean, like, technologies on the internet is a really easy way to do that. So our networks of people, like friend networks, and those have been helpful for so many reasons, even just for this trip. But I think that Moneyless Society's true nature is it's almost invisible. It's like the natures that are already there. We are just making the committed claim to not, or the commitment to not interfere with that. And that's what money has been. Like, if you look through history at when money came to be, how it's been brought into different cultures, it's very linked thematically with enclosure too, where all of these boundaries are being placed on what people can do, and the shape of our commerce is decided by whether someone can participate in an equal exchange, which is never equal. Like, if you have exchange and the goal or the rule is to have like something of equal value, then the game that comes out of that is, okay, how can I get a little bit more than I give? Where the true value isn't quantifiable like that. There is no inherent value. Everything has a different value to different people in different places. So, I'm just excited to see what happens when people can access each other and contribute, not just to like one-to-one, in some Signal chat, but to society, because we aren't trying to build a moneyless town. We aren't trying to build a moneyless state. We're trying to build a society by connecting all of those different facets already exist. It's just a matter of people accepting a different standard for interacting. And it sounds like a truism or some aphorism, but it's literally that simple, because there are so many things on the table when you come to make the stone soup with people, that you realize, like, I didn't need the money. I didn't need to buy these things. And it's liberating. It's dangerously liberating because, that has a history too, but yeah.
When you talk about not needing the money and what we aren't trying to do, I think it's a good time to jump in and just give a really brief inventory of what is going on behind the screen. And it's so exciting to me. In my mind, I see it like a curtain raising, and like you can see all the works that are going on. So for those of you who don't know, and I'm sure it's most of you, and that's our fault, but here we are talking about it today. So we have, as was touched on, a sociocratic structure, and at this point in our evolution, since around 3 years of incorporation, but 2 years of really robust activity, we now have like this board across which is a hive mind of like consistently firing nodes of knowledge, as was touched on, in healing, and just a pouring of contribution from all angles and all walks of life. And so from that, we've been able to kind of structure and frame it so that we have teams and circles. And to run down that list, and I may forget one or two, we have everything from a general circle, which could use more context in this conversation, a people circle, we have a systemic healing circle, we have grant circles, board circles, admin circles, we have pretty much research circles with our fundraising offshoot, we have a social circle. We have such a fertile ground for actualizing and coming together, and like Janique said, exponentially gaining ground on the things that will sustain life and perhaps turn the world we know around and make it somewhere that we can not just survive but thrive. And I am so incredibly gratified to be able to sit here today amongst these exceptional people and know also all the other people that are working eye-bleeding hours on screens to make this stuff happen, and say to all of you, this exists and you can come be a part of it right now if you would like. and you will be unceasingly rewarded and gratified with what you find and how you benefit from just being a part of this space and this group.
And can I just speak to pouring eyes over screens? There is one member, Heather, who's not here.
Yeah.
Who should be here.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's just such an incredible example of someone who is living their life, knowing everything isn't working.
In a van.
Having all these natural connections already from their own inertia of their life, and just dedicating so many hours to the onboarding process, volunteering, just because she sees that it needs to be done. And it's not her field of expertise. We're all learning things.
She does so many things that she hates, but it just needs to be done.
Yeah, and that's what people feel like they really need to understand is we don't need to be paid to fill our needs.
But we're getting our needs filled by having this interaction, showing up and being in this space where it's reciprocal. There's no money needed in that context. I have to rep Tomas, since you brought up Heather. We're all very sad and regretful that he couldn't be here, but at the same time, we know this is only the beginning of IRL retreats, and there's more to come on that soon, I'm sure. But Tomas is a volunteer living in Mexico who regularly combats the most horrific systemic issues, from water scarcity to water poisoning to heat waves to lack of safe infrastructure and housing and food scarcity, you name it. He lives somewhere in Mexico. I can't remember the name of the town, but it's nearby Mexico City. And so, he's another who from day one, he's one of the OGs, as we refer to our core members that I first recruited with Matt and Marlo. And so he has been on our grant team from day one. And despite all the horrors that persist in his environment and life, he persists even more, being there on screen with the spreadsheets, doing the grunt work that literally no one else wants to do, and even maybe realizes is actually part of the revolution per the system we live in right now. He is the prime example of someone who is working by the candlelight to invent the light bulb. Nobody wants to do the spreadsheets and look for money to fund things and do the paperwork, but it's the candle we have to work by, while the rest of us are innovating on that light bulb from his support. And so hopefully any day now we're going to have another light bulb moment.
I just want to speak to the efficacy of the environmental construction of what we're doing. We're building this sort of garden, this ecosystem where, the systemic support group, I was like, we need a systemic support group. And I didn't really have the stick-to-itiveness to do it. It was like spitting a watermelon seed in a garden and you come back and it's just grown. I started that group and pulled a bunch of people in and then left for 6 months and came back, and people were like, and that's when I realized I'd become my father. People were really tearing up and crying and out open sourcing, really skilled work. That it's hard work to heal, and it's hard work to heal with each other. It takes a lot of practice, but when you put people into a circle, strangers, we can figure it out. And so this is an overarching larger theory of change that, we get people coming into these spaces, and some of them are like, we've got to build a militia and we've got to fortify ourselves, the government, and we're just like, chill, it's okay, easy. But it's a very accepting space. It's a non-judgmental space that we are very compassionate and patient with people. We work with people where they are. But it's you can take somebody who doesn't, a lot of people are I don't really know where to get started. Some people like Lavra have a really specific thing. I have a really specific thing. I think a few autists can basically absorb every industry. But there's a lot of people who are like, what can I do? I don't know what to do. I don't know where to get started. I hate this world so much. I'm filled with so much anger and passion and rage and fear and uncertainty about the future. What can I do? I'm just one person. I've just been trained to be a wage slave my whole life. And it's come on. Just get started and find and just chill with us, hang out with us, engage in the conversation, lurk, find any level of engagement that works for you. My level of engagement is not to be in the weeds doing the paperwork, and God bless all the people that it is. I'm digging around in the wide world trying to find subversive mutual aid structures and places where people are doing things radically and bringing them back and connecting them to a larger global struggle. But there's a place for every person in this movement, and you will be accepted as you are. And that's a beautiful thing, a very rare thing.
Yeah.
Especially in an age of such shameful, judgmental, sort of like Maoist slacktivism and judgment and self-hatred. Like, we've created a shame-free space.
Yeah.
And
I'm sorry, can I just jump in really quickly? I think it's important to make a quick distinction, very, very quickly, because when you say things, and I say it all the time too, especially with ACM, you will be welcome for who you are. You will be accepted. Just show up as you are. And I'm sure most of us know that that's also a slogan used by institutions like religious institutions, like the Christian institution. And so I think it's really important to distinguish. It's not the same in context, whereas you'll be welcome for who you are in the church per se, because let's be honest, as long as you sit in the pew and be quiet, versus in our space, you'll be welcome for who you are and what you bring, because we recognize the value in your individualistic, not in your individualistic framework, but like what you as an individual, as your own unique person brings to the table. Like, we have like all intentions of being sure that you actualize and you get to enact what you have in you, and not expect you to just sit around and like absorb whatever's being said to you and just like not think for yourself. And I think that the systemic support group's a great example of that, and how Marlo's saying, just come as you are, bring what you have, because it will help to plant more seeds. Like with the systemic support group, Marlo said we should have this, but didn't have the toolbox or the time because of his other endeavors to sit around and build it. So like, per se, one of you out there have an idea, brings it to the table and says, this sounds good. Anyone around here able to dedicate the time and tools to making it happen? That's kind of how things are bred around here. So like, he brought that idea to the table, he made some connections, and then the people picked up the pieces and ran with it, such as Crystal, our in-house counselor and psychologist, and Heather, who also put a lot of labor into helping Crystal lift that project off the ground once it was presented as something to try and achieve.
And that we saw that there was a lot of interest in it.
Oh yeah, that one took off like a rocket. And now it has offshoots for somatic healing and dream sessions, and just our weekly like capitalist AA meetings where we're like, capitalism is like ruining my life, and we're all sitting around talking about and further realizing how much it's influenced who we are. Just learning more and more how our environment does establish who we are and how we live our lives, and how to combat that by creating this ecosystem, as Marlo also touched on.
I had this inspiration last night that when you have the pyramid, it starts out crushing your individuality, and then it gets up when you're at the very top, then you're an individual. And even though that makes you a conformist because you've had to go through this whole fucked to be fucked, system to get there. But when you invert the pyramid and we do things in a bottom-up way, we start with the individual. You start at the individual, and then you get up to the point where everybody is actualized, working together in this larger societal structure.
So I think the reason Moneyless Society works so well is because we all have a background of wanting to help each other and wanting to help the world, and that brings care for one another, and it brings growth in all ways. That's how we got all the circles. It's because we all wanted to grow, and we all wanted to hold space for each other. That's how we got the direct action circle. It's how we got the people circle. It's how we got all these projects running, to hold more space for more people, and that's just going to keep growing because it's going to keep getting bigger. We're going to keep holding space for more people.
One of the things that is so crucial to creating what we want is dreaming it so thoroughly that we can't help but materialize it. And so, we're all wearing many hats here as we, grow and put time in different ways. But one of the things that I've been excited about is helping build the collective dream for the things that we want to actualize on the ground. And so we create different spaces where we say, okay, what do we want to dream about? And anybody can bring in the inspiration for what that particular dream looks like for them, but we create some sort of a frame, and then we just go and exercise the muscles of our imagination, because this system constricts that. And So people and sometimes when we're talking about MoSo and people aren't sure what to make of it, I think it's because that muscle has been a little bit atrophied by the conditions and circumstances. Some grace for the spectrum of how people's imaginations have been impacted. But it's been really interesting in these dreaming sessions to figure out even the areas where our dreaming muscles have been constricted in some way, just from the day-to-day grind of things. And I think, well, if some of us are feeling a little challenged about jumping into the really visceral envisioning of what we want, think about what it's like for so many other people that are really challenged to jump into the dream space. So, whether people come in here or not, I encourage, get that dream muscle going, dream what you want. And if it's something you want to bring in here, great. If it's something you want to do elsewhere, it's all the same, really, right? We're connecting the dreams together for the ways that we want to live. So I think that that's a really exciting space for people to be expansive in and get really rich with it. And then I just want to speak for 1 minute to Magnova, because Magnova was what brought me in here. Love the Insta page, love the pod. When I heard you, Labra, talking about Magnova, I was like, I gotta get in there. Because I had written in the isolation of my cube with my bed in it, I had written out notebooks and notebooks and notebooks of what our transformational lives look like, and the community scaffolding and the structures and the interconnections and the webs and the this and the that and the global and the local and Magnova was so clearly to me the platform that I would never have the chops to build, but that I had seen in my mind. And when you were talking about it, I was like, oh my God. So this repository for action that interconnects expertise and mentors and students and hyperlocal projects and gives people a way to look at a big inventory of what's happening and where those connections are and how they can learn how to do something based on what somebody else has done, and we can find teachers and students for all of it. That platform is so vital to housing what we want to do, and that piece was so integral for me. And so that was what practically brought me through the door, was okay, gotta get in there.
Really quickly, I think it's a great time now to just throw out a couple of our unofficial slogans that we have so many. All you say there speaks to one of them, which is build the world you want to live in. It's like a notch up, I think, from be the change. Be the change is so broad.
Being the change is building the world.
Exactly. Like in the actionable sense, you've got to pick up some tools or realize what yours are and come together with the builders and start hammering it together. Another one that comes to mind, and I think it's because of something that you said before the recording started, Ev, that remind me of my old dusty anarchist website from years ago. And so the landing page slogan was, the world is a canvas, paint it with your vision. Another point of immense gratification, because I see us all here with paintbrushes in our hands, consistently coming back to the canvas, collaborating on what that vision looks like, and it's ever changing and emergent. It's just like one of those incredible paintings that you can get lost in and find yourself in so many aspects of it, and yet it keeps changing as you change. Like your perspective of it is ever changing because it's ever changing.
I wanted to tie a few threads that came up together, because we've said that we're about consent, and that we're about just letting the organic ideas emerge and the dreams that are shared just become real by letting them be. And I want to say that one thing that separates Moneyless Society from any other nonprofit that I know of, and that most other people either take issue with or love to death. It's very polarizing. We are very much about letting, letting people bring themselves to the table. But the way that we are shaping all of this as a group is a lot of prefigurative politics, where we are not just going out there and doing things, and we are very explicitly refraining from that kind of approach, because that's being done by a lot of people, and it's the meta level that is a little bit trickier and historically has caused movements to be violently crushed, where people are doing what feels right, but there's not necessarily the mindfulness collectively of, okay, how is this going to affect the various systems in power? How is this going to antagonize certain communities? And that's what we're always doing. So when we move slowly, it's very deliberate, because it's like we're writing the watermelon seed to plant. Like we're not just like going out there and throwing stuff in. We're like thinking, okay, if I do this, how are these people going to react? Which is an empathy exercise, and a communication exercise sometimes too. And what is this going to become? So, let's say you have like a pile of seeds and you just throw it in the ground. Well, like some of the plants aren't going to grow well together or will compete. And we're thinking about, what is that garden going to look like when we plant the seeds that we have? Absolutely. How can we plant them in a way that they're in harmony?
It's a social ecology, and it's a sort of a ecosystemic social permaculture, where we're designing a habitat, we're designing a social system. It isn't orderless. There is a structure to it. There's a lot of structure, but a good structure flows, and it's returning that flow that you're talking about that's been blocked. Of a lot of people, have only known the conditioning of being told what to do and telling others what to do, and so we're really working to break out of that. I want to speak to something you were saying earlier, though, that like money is this sort of root cause. And I think the root cause is like this sort of much more complex sort of socioeconomic hijacking of our social environmental nature, that a human being can be conditioned into anything. That, if you're born, like someone from the Inuit regions, born in South America, raised in a South American culture, is not going to really know how to build an ice house. Yeah. And so we have been conditioned into this culture, and conditioned around this thing, money, that has basically been the driving feedback loop to reinforce an antisocial culture, where we are canceling out our sort of relations with each other. The sort of residual healthy debt of like, I gave you guys all a little cowrie shell. You owe me, like you did the dishes, I owe you, you gave me a great back massage, I owe you, it's like we are connected because we need each other, we're interdependent. Yeah. But yeah, I just want to speak to like that there's not a reductionism here, that this isn't just like we can just end money and everything will be fine. It's an organismic process that we are developing and learning and growing, and we don't have it all figured out, and we're figuring it out through this collective intelligence process and working within all of the existing institutions that we are stuck within today to create a transitional step, within the stuffy legal structure of a nonprofit, within, the need to make money, that we all need a certain amount of money to exist in this construct, way less than we think, but we still need it, and we still need to contend with those systems. That we're not naive people, we're deeply pragmatic in, yes, we have a high vision, but it's also a vision that you don't need a vision to do it. You step into Moneyless Society every time you're with your friends, your family, your dog, your lover. There's no fucking money present, and it would be gross, and we all understand this. So it's like we are weaving like this DNA helix of like old world, new world, old world, new world. And something totally new comes about. We have an idea of what we'd like things to be, and then it goes into this garden, and it comes out differently. And it's like a child, Yeah. You raise your child, they're going to come out differently than you expect, and that's beautiful.
Can I speak to the prefigurative politics, just to some of the structure? Because that's sort of my contribution, is studying the paradigm that created what we have and developing a paradigm that would suggest what we want. And one of the principles is horizontal organizing and the decentralization of power, which is something that's happening as a natural part of our evolution with the advancement of technology. I like to explain the decentralization of power as like if you imagine power as water in a bucket, what technology does is it's poking holes in that bucket in terms of access. And that's happening, right? So we're either going to learn how to develop cups for everyone to use this water, or the state has their own plan where they're going to put it back into the bucket. And that's why the decentralization of power, that's why we use horizontal organizing, that's why everything is based on consent. And that is why it's not one person's job to know everything. Yeah. Like that's comes from representation and centralization of power, where it's like, yeah, Marlo had the seed, but he needed the tender, the steward of it, right? And they're both valuable. And so it's understanding, so horizontal organizing and the decentralization of power is one principle that we use to kind of guide us into what seems unknown, but more we go into it, it's like, oh, this is just how everyone used to do it, right? And the second is just connection. Is we're raised in a capitalist, competitive, patriarchal, colonialistic society that demands everything is
separate. Get 'em, girl.
Right? It demands everything is separate. That's the only way it fucking makes sense. Is that I am separate from my community, so I'm under threat. I am separate from my resources, so I have to earn them. And I am separate from the truth and from reality, so it's like I could be wrong about it, and that someone else could be right, and we're fighting over who has access to this separate objective reality. So whenever we're moving into this space, the highest priority that I use is connection. Well, how are these things connected instead of how are they separate? And that will lead you inevitably through shadow work, through growth, through healing trauma, and building and finding the connection of things that you have in your mind, and you'll find out someone's already fucking made it. Right. I mean, that is the measure of this change, where it's like, oh, I felt so overwhelmed that I have to build an app, and I have to do this, and this is going through my mind, and then I find Lava's already fucking made it. You know, it's so nice.
Yeah. And then what I'm thinking is just to celebrate what other people are already making.
Yeah. Right, and we all
to map it out.
We're just puzzle pieces.
Which is my favorite thing. One of my favorite things about Lava's essence is that it so embodies the open source aspect of this movement, and that we should not ever be trying to reinvent the wheel, only looking for the others who have the pieces that fit with ours to like bring it all together. Really quickly, I know you've got your hand up, Nathan, but touching on roles and things and stuff that we're all doing, I think it would add a really valuable layer of sustenance for us to all just go down the line here, if you're comfortable with the admission, and say, this is what I do, and this is my role, and my role, not my title, this is my role or roles in Moneyless Society. And don't be shy, because every single person here invests so incredibly much, so don't hold back, if you would.
I can actually start that. It ties into what because I wanted to speak to connection specifically, because that's what really radicalized me, is just the feeling of deep disconnection in the world and with everything else. And you know, my podcast and my work with the Kindness Rebellion was focused on establishing connection with self, each other, and the planet through understanding, love, and kindness, right? And to step through that process was what I'm configuring, and understanding to me is the basis of connection. As soon as we can understand where each other, where our needs, as soon as we understand needs, then we can be on the same page of communicating those needs, which is how we love. We show up for each other, we communicate those needs, we supply those needs, and then kindness is when we fuck up. It's how we mitigate that, we heal back together, and then we just balance all three of those together. And that was the role that I felt, is I was just I want to facilitate connection as much as possible with myself, with other people, and especially with the planet. When I'm pulling potatoes and getting so goddamn excited about it. Really? Yeah, so that facilitation has been so important. And it's funny how I've realized that something I thoroughly enjoy in the organization is coordinating people. Is just okay, what are our needs? Okay, I know that these people are working on that, let's connect them together. And then giving space for other people to connect with them, and when people give me the space to connect with them, is just so extremely valuable. And that's been the primary value for me in this organization, is just seeing connection flourish and just be so abundant and be an integral part of coordinating it.
So what's your role?
That?
Well, what's the name of your role for identification purposes?
You said not like, because I don't want to say coordinator.
Well, I'm saying like, I'm just letting the listeners and viewers know this. We're not coming from a title perspective. We're coming from just like identifying what each other's contribution is, and there's a name for those. So yours is.
I want to say that my contribution is facilitating connection and growing connection.
But like in sociocracy, you're a
facilitator. I'm a facilitator, yeah. I'm often a facilitator and
all these child circles.
And
for which circles?
And a coordinator. Oh, okay. So this is titles.
I guess.
Yeah.
I guess.
So, I'm often a facilitator for the general circle, although I recently cycled out of that, which is healthy. And then I'm an admin, internal coordinator, and facilitator. And then I have facilitated mission circle meetings as well.
So you get to wear a lot of hats, but ones that are fulfilling, that expand your mind and further you on your journey.
Yeah. Exactly.
And obviously benefit a lot of other people. Mia, and then maybe we'll skip back to Marlo and go this way. What do you feel your...
My contribution, my title. I have a title. I shouldn't have it anymore because I don't do it. Heather does it. Right? Because like everyone in capitalism, like sometimes my life needs my attention, right? And we all understand that, right? We're all in the same sinking ship of capitalism. But in terms of my personal contribution, I love to talk about the ideas and the patterns of thinking that get you certain things. So whenever I come into a conversation, I'm always looking for like, okay, but how would that work energetically in terms of particular principles that I've researched? Because there are commonalities and consistencies to this it's not new way of thinking, but it is identifiable from the previous way of thinking. So that's all. If you want to talk about energy and abstract concepts, I'm the one to reach out to.
We love you for it. How about you, Marlo?
I've had a lot of different roles, official and unofficial, throughout the evolution of this organism. Starting out, sort of speaking it into life with the podcast and just being sort of an emissary of the articulation of the vision of the world we want to go to speak it into being and to communicate it to other people. And then as the organization itself sort of evolved, I had a vision, based on many failed and successful iterations of other activist groups and other forms of activism and ways of organizing of what things could be. And was very involved in kind of bringing a lot of like fire and energy into getting things activated and moving and sort of being a disruptor, and then kind of pulling back from that and spending more of my time kind of in the external realm in how this ecosystem, this circle, connects to larger patterns and trends in the world and other organizations and people out there who are sort of building stages of this transition, whether they're transitions like cooperative structures, or they're alternative currencies, or they're indigenous peoples who have been living moneylessly for thousands of years. It's basically telling the larger story of humanity's phase shift and transition, and really just understanding it on a very deep level, understanding, really like taking it apart constantly and seeing how it all fits together, and kind of frustratingly, ceaselessly questioning where we are and where we're going, and trying to fit it all together in that super connection of like, how does our organization and our movement fit with others? How does it fit with the bioregional movement, or with the movement for the commons, or with Web3, or with all of these other people that are attacking the problem with different language, from different perspectives, and sort of trying to help them understand actually money is a problem. It's not inert. But yeah, it's ultimately about the story. It's about fitting it all together and connecting it in narrative, in a larger story, in the films and videos and podcasts and rants that I've made, and to speak it into being and fire people up about it, because I am so pissed off about the way the world is. I'm so pissed that a child dies of hunger every 5 seconds. I'm so pissed that we have killed 70% of life on Earth. I'm so pissed that the political system is completely corrupted by money, and that nobody seems to get the final connecting factor. that every documentary is like, so we followed the money, and they uncover some perverse financial incentive. And then they end with like, oh, and the solution is for you to vote with your fucking dollars. No, that's not the answer. And activists who are focused on one thing, who are focused on one issue, I have to connect with those people and try to help them see that not only do you have the responsibility to solve the problem that you're pointing out, you have to have a vision of what the world is on the other side of that.
Yeah.
And to articulate that and structure it and then do it. And these are the people that are the ones that are doing it. I'm a talker and a visionary, you know? And there's not a lot of substance in it. I'm not a good organizer, just to be honest. I'm a terror in these spaces.
So what I do is I do stuff similar to Nathan. I facilitate a lot of meetings, specifically for the People Circle and the Direct Action Circle. It's been rewarding and it's been a learning process. Nathan's been doing it for a longer time than me, so I'm still learning it, but I'm getting better at it for sure. I also do other things around the org. I do social media moderation for the Discord and the Facebook. And besides that, I just enjoy being active in the circles and talking to people.
Mm-hmm. And you have plans for direct action, don't you, in your region?
I have many plans myself to transform my neighborhood. I have a vision of it, but it's just getting there.
And it's because you've had your hands on a project at ACM. Right. You come down and you volunteer for Appalachian Community Meal on top of everything else.
And I have the privilege of that because I'm so close to Amanda and her ACM events. But I just wanted to put out that my experience in the organization, remotely, online, has given me the confidence to want to keep pursuing things in my own region. It really gives experience, and it just gives experience, and it gives motivation.
Awesome.
So that's what I've been doing.
Let's see here. So I've had an evolution of role changing, and I love to speak to it because I think it's a good example of how one can get involved and just like grow, like, you know, the seeds that we're planting in the garden. So when I first came on with Matthew, as I mentioned, I was just posting memes 24/7. I'm just 24/7. I became obsessed.
24/8.
Something like that, yeah. And it snowballed. So I was like meme poster, and then like NPO startup, and then admin, and then secretary, and then co-founder when we incorporated, and then first recruiter, and then we brought on all these exceptional people, and boom, we have amazing things going on in all directions. So I went from just kind of like wearing all the hats stacked up as tall as they would go to just like frisbeeing them out, and they all landed better than I could have ever dreamed. Like the universe, not to be all woo-woo, but the universe, the magnetism of who we are organically and what we're doing brought these people that you see here today in, and I just was the recipient. I wasn't the conductor. I wasn't the person who orchestrated it or anything. I just showed up as me and done what was in my mind and my heart to do. And as they say, be yourself and you'll find your tribe. And bam, here we are. But all that to say, now I am much more on the ground with the Appalachian Community Meal and Mutual Aid Project. I've went from being like the sole online disseminator besides Marlo's podcasts and stories to taking a very comfortable back seat, whereas you'll learn from Ev in a moment, is like doing miracle work with our Instagram, and I'm still posting on Facebook, and it is such like at first it was so scary, but now it's like I'm so glad that we made this transition, because now I'm like boots on the ground making tangible impact and organizing and
networking IRL, which is just another whole experience that is so incredibly gratifying, but more than that, like relieving in the sense that I'm like the belief that there's others out there is being reinforced continuously. But to boil all that down, title or role wise, I'm in the admin circle, right? And I'm in the grant circle. I'm just kind of like members now, not like wearing all the hats. Like admin circle member, grant circle member, mostly support there. A board member, obviously, co-founder, Facebook meme poster, podcast host time to time, and like somebody who's just enjoys sharing their concepts, their thoughts, their dreams, their vulnerability in a space where I know that it's safe to do so and it's going to be watered and it'll flourish. And then also with like the ACM founding thing, but we'll do another podcast on that, I'm sure.
Not sure what my role, I mean, I think that I do serve a visionary purpose for sure, and a dreamer purpose, and I brought those visions and dreams right in the front door with me. I think I'm a communicator, a connector. I like to turn the dreams into the practical applications, so I like to help figure out how to take the dream into some sort of a practice. I'm very into anything that's nourishing. So I like to nourish the different spaces that I drop into with whatever feels like it might be enriching in some way. I'm in quite a few circles. The direct action circle, which was kind of like, I can't wait to get my hands on that one. so it's exciting to have that one off the ground. Admin circle, grant writing, which is so valuable because that, we need to move while we're in the system of money. We need to move the money from somewhere over there to somewhere in here and get those things nourished financially because that's what we're operating with right now.
Composting capital.
Composting capital. Love that.
Yeah, that's a great way to put that. I love that.
Building the new in the shell of the old.
Yep, exactly. So the admin and the grant writing, fundraising circle that is moving into the process of how to create places where people can be valued for the services that they're bringing to the table. I'm sort of I guess I would say an honorary member of the people circle, in the general circle, and I might have missed a circle somewhere.
Well, you show up and support everywhere. Yeah, like, okay, now she has all the hats.
Yeah, but so I like to share as I can and help the healing process. I'm very, very into helping the healing process.
And very good at it.
Yeah.
So I guess I don't know if anything I said integrated well, but I do feel like I'm an integrator of sorts.
Well, there you go. There's your role versus the titles. Yeah.
Janique and I, well, she always says what I want to say first, so I just don't even have to talk most of the time. That's not true. Yeah, I mean, I'll fit like whatever like element, like whatever technomancy element. That's where I guess have driven my like early attention to the technomancy, which is to me like my fancy way of saying tech circle, but also trying to recognize we're not just trying to manage the existing systems, we're trying to invent new ways of combining them, inventing new systems entirely, thinking about, so my role is thinking about what data do we need to track, how do we need to organize our information, our documents. So that's like one of the major activities I've done at MoSo. I literally came on trying to I was like, oh, I noticed some broken links on the website. Do you want help fixing them? And I ended up like helping with the website, and then I ended up on the board of directors, and then I ended up bringing Magnova into the fray. And Magnova is my main project. It is the platform that is going to be fiscally sponsored by Moneyless Society to act as the information hub where we share are like, we note wherever people notice what's wrong with the world, they can put it up as an issue on Magnova that can be divided into or connected to locations. So you get local issues, which are their own pages where you can talk about how does that issue work in this place. So what I'm doing is kind of working at the intersection of that project, two other projects, one which is web development for social good, the other which is providing support and accessible jobs to people who are neurodivergent or disabled. For instance, like almost the very large majority of autistic people like myself are unemployed. So I'm always thinking about how can we help people survive in this kind of economy. So what kind of web apps are going to help us, drive business that is not going to lead to just endless growth, but is set up as a workers' cooperative so that it grows the community around it. And that, as far as I think we've all seen, has been the most effective way to organize a corporation. If it's going to be for profit, then if everyone in the business owns it, if you can't buy votes, if you can't buy influence, then you have a community deciding things. And then that means you get fundamentally different values from the get-go, and through growth. Growth is sustainable and they all connect to each other. And, that's where I'm at. That's where I am focusing, connecting the different organizations and the different circles. So I'm in, a lot of circles and just being in chats, being in meetings without really participating so that I can maybe poke in, hey, there's this resource that would dramatically make your lives easier. You want to do this thing? Well, we've already done this thing and it's just in a different circle. So, figuring out how to integrate. And I've been a facilitator of various circles. I've been in the mission circle, the general circle, the people circle, the grants and fundraising circle, the admin circle, and the technomancy circle. And serving a role in most of them, slacking my role for some, waiting for people to come into the circle before we get meetings going, for instance. And then, that would be my roles.
And a lot more, frankly.
You'll notice that a lot of people have filled a lot of the roles, and that's because as we're building it, people are coming in, and it's been really cool to see people kind of taking those on. And for me, I've been a part of the media messaging circle. The whole idea there is this,
Right.
we're doing the videos and the content to kind of bring these ideas out to the world, and they're out there in the world, but I think about it a lot as translation, meeting people where they're at with this understanding and trying to, make those ideas accessible and relatable. And so, like Amanda said, I've taken over, it's mine, the Instagram page.
For his various agendas to save the world.
Yeah, right.
From itself.
My path into this was it's been uncanny. This was all stuff that I was doing on my own. I was podcasting, I was doing videos, I was making graphics, and when I encountered Moneyless Society, it kind of clicked that the next step was I need to be doing this with other people. I cannot make enough of an impact on my own. And so coming in here, I similarly have taken on a lot of roles in the media messaging circle. So I've done facilitator, I've done internal coordinator, done scribe, and they're all things that aren't hard to get accustomed to. It feels weird at first because you're used to that business environment of I don't type that fast, and it's no one cares.
Will
if
you do it?
Can you handwrite it? Do you just have an idea of what we talked about in the meeting? So I've had a lot of experience with that, but mostly it's just creative ways forward, thinking about how do we find lots of different ways to explain this and lots of different ways to unearth these understandings for people that are kind of in there already. And so, I've been happy to be able to do that for lots of different projects that we have that aren't even necessarily related directly to circle things. It's just hey, we need to do a fundraiser. What can we do for that? Hey, what are some creative approaches to the problems that we're having, and how can art help that? That's been a mind-blowing thing for me. Is like there's no skill that's not useful here. We've had people come in that are like, right, like people have come in and it's like, I made some like silly memes, and it's like, give me them, like give me your memes, like because so many of us have said that we came here through the page where it's like, you're just swiping and it's like, oh man, yeah. Oh yeah, and it's like, it seems like such a low bar, but like if you make silly memes because you get it, that's a hell of a contribution,
It's the new theory, and praxis in some ways.
I wanna just give a gratitude to Ev for all that he does, because his humility is underwriting what he's doing. I mean, your graphics have helped people in Palestine get out of Palestine.
Yeah.
Yep.
Free Palestine.
And it's I keep doing that. You're going to hate editing this audio. But and like with my situation, like he was talking about creative instances to pop up and use art, apply it in some revolutionary way, like with ACM fundraising, with my personal fundraising, with Palestinian fundraising, with a consistent flow of revolutionary content on Instagram, with editing and putting together the podcast, with facilitating our M&M meetings. Like, I'm sorry, but I'm telling on you because you are being way too modest. Stickers, the stickers, and you helped head up the when we made our brochures and business cards and everything too. I mean, like.
We have some campaigns.
You're similar.
Marlo.
Trenton was it? I want to say.
Yes.
What was I going to say? Trenton was going to say something.
Well, I just wanted to thank our 20-30 volunteers that aren't here today.
Right on.
All over the circles, coming to meetings.
All over the world.
Weekly, bi-weekly, all over the world. Consistently showing up and creating community where us 8 couldn't do it on our own.
We have 100, right? Like we're at 100 people in our social channel.
Right. Talking and stuff.
Yeah, thank you, Heather.
Yeah, but like it's important to understand the context too. Like those 100 people are people who have onboarded to the social channel via our shared values and ethics code, if you will. There's, God only knows how many people are actually following and engaging in these conversations and IRL on the other side of the screen, but we have the 100 that we just hit the mark of in our social channel that we're grateful for as well. But then like Trenton touched on, like actually dozens, like upwards of 50 people around the world and here in the States that are showing up pretty consistently, if not semi-frequently, consistently putting in the work and contributing.
So a sort of benchmark, I think, talking about the aspirational components of not just what Moneyless Society is now and has been and all of that, but where we would like it to go and what we want it to be, giving it the headroom to evolve into what it can be. And just to speak to that briefly for my own obsessions, my own sort of angle, weaving and interconnecting it with other movements is creating a transitional federated structure that takes all of these different novel structures and transitions and steps across the river, like worker cooperatives, like alternative currencies, like time banking, like mutual aid networks, like nonprofits, like B Corps, like all these different structures are ultimately suffering from the same siloed problem. And a lot of tech projects are like this as well. And so the interconnection into a larger transitional movement that can get us toward a world beyond money is really the aim. And to see how can we synergistically stack forms of activism, community building, application building, design, development, growing food, sharing, all of these different communicative aspects, everything, how do we stack it together into a system? Because money connects all of our problems. It connects them. That's what makes it so deadly and so dangerous, is because it's the relationship builder between these things that, because we're so object oriented, we think about species extinction, we think about pollution. We're not thinking about what's connecting these things and underlying incentives and structures that are driving them. So in countering that, we need a system. And that might sound complex. It is. It is extremely complex.
It's natural.
But it's natural.
Inborn. It's that complex collective intelligence of evolution and functionality.
Which means it may not be as complicated as we're intimidated.
It's not. Like the process is complex, but the principles are simple.
Right.
And it's only complex because it's personal.
But the connection's more simple than the grief. And when you say money's what connects all of our issues, we are what connect all the solutions.
And we're already doing it. We've
Yeah.
already created it. So it's just going to keep growing from here.
Where are we going?
Tune in for next
yeah.
episode.
Already. Yeah, just the work is already done. We're just getting it organized.
Right.
Yeah. That's a major thing I love to say. Like, the work's already done.
Hyper-local that, you know, there are concentric circles that overlap from every single hyper-local project to weave together into the interconnected ecosystems that are all fractals, right? We're just building on fractals of natural ecosystems that start with whatever's going on in our individual body, like our part of the organism, and we're just growing this interconnected superorganism of ecosystems that are all going to reference each other in natural, abundant, organic ways, as would this ecosystem that we're here experiencing, right? So I feel like that's what we're building on, and Magnova can house those ecosystems and make those connections evident.
Very much a think global, act local approach.
I mean, we're here talking about the idea of a Moneyless Society, a home base, a hub, a physical space. I mean, that is the next space. As we are meeting together here in person as human beings, we want to create permanent structures where people can come and meet each other and get their feet on the ground and live these principles and experiment and test and do the thing.
Yeah.
Learn.
And so, again, with another point of gratification, it's so amazing to sit here and be able to say confidently, this is to be continued, because when we come together again, it will be on a MoSo home base.
Yeah, most likely.
With your help, viewer.
Yeah.
I think last word is just a thank you to all the people that have made this possible who aren't here, and to all the people that are to come, and all the people watching that are thinking, I'm into that. That sounds great. I would like to do that. Don't hesitate. Reach out, join us, get involved, bring whatever you have to bring. And if you want to create change in the world, you can.
And I thank you to Kay Williams, my aunt, for hosting us.
Yes.
Who has written
Thank you, Kay.
4 or 5 books. So that's on Amazon by Kay Williams.
And look out for content and an episode on the game that is literally world-changing and perspective gifting to all that we're doing here. Very excited for that to come out. Oh, yeah. Oh, it's like the analog Magnova. Yeah.
No, I'm going to be very inspired and like, how can we find this platform?
Yeah.
Are we going to do like a group hug thing if we want to?
Group hug.
Group hug.
Yes.
Yeah. Come on.
Group hug.
Do you want to do something about all the issues we talk about here on our show? Do you want to learn more, get involved, and help us help others break out of the cycle? Step 1 is to join the growing community of rebels and kind hearts sharing their knowledge and passion. Follow Moneyless Society on our social media pages and spread the message to people who need it. When you're ready, you can get involved by reaching out and becoming a Moneyless Society volunteer. We need every skill imaginable, large or small, if we're going to resist the powers destroying our planet. And even if you don't have time to volunteer, you can help us build the dream with donations of any size. We create all of this community and content because it is our passion, but we need resources to get it done. Monthly Patreon donors receive cool perks like early access to future episodes, and visitors to our website, moneylesssociety.com, can buy MoSo shirts and other merchandise that help spread awareness. We're glad you're here, and we hope that you'll keep learning and growing with us. The goal may seem far away, but we can get there together.